After the Rain, a series that came with massive preconceived notions of wish fulfillment. And honestly, could you blame people for having those preconceived notions? The synopsis makes this anime out as being a frivolous encounter between a 17-year-old girl and a 45-year-old man. I mean, why can't we get a story that shows a more mature perspective of this? A story that treats its subject matter seriously and with no jokes or fan service. Anime, at its worst, is wish fulfillment garbage, and you'd certainly not want to watch those kinds of shows. So where are the shows that treat subject matters like this seriously? Well, what if I told you that After the Rain is actually just that show? Throughout this review, I hope to relieve any grievances you may have going into this anime, so please enjoy my review for the fantastic anime by Wit Studios, After the Rain. Akira Tachibana, a reserved high school student and former track runner, has not been able to race the same as she used to since she experienced a severe foot injury. And although she is regarded as attractive by her classmates, she is not interested in the boys around school. While working part-time at the Garden Cafe, Akira begins to develop feelings for the manager, a 45-year-old man named Masami Kondou, despite the large age gap. Kondou shows genuine concern and kindness towards the customers of his restaurant, which, while viewed by others as soft or weak, draws Akira to him. Spending time together at the restaurant, they grow closer, which only strengthens their feelings. Weighed down by these uncertain emotions, Akira finally resolves to confess, but what will be the result? After the Rain is based off a manga of the same name by Jun Miyazuki, which is also his only work. It was adapted into an anime by Wit Studios, a subsidiary of Production IG, who are known for the well-known Ancient Magus' Bride and the Attack on Titan franchise, which I'm sure you've heard of at some point. The anime is also 12 episodes with a normal runtime of 24 minutes and is directed by Ayumu Watanabe, a celebrated director who is known for Doraemon and Space Brothers.
Tachibana! Tachibana! Ohayo!
After the Rain is a show that defied all preconceived notions and expectations, but on its path the show had its fair share of highs and lows. One of the many aforementioned highs this show has is developing its characters through simple visual storytelling without really any words being spoken. Example of this is Akira Tachibana stumbling upon Mr. Kondou's study and seeing how it's covered in books and manuscripts. This scene is beautiful because as Akira stares on at the wreckage of his room through the sliver of a door, she starts to really understand Kondou and what he likes to do. She may not exactly know what that is just yet, but she knows that he now has a passion for something, and that passion to him is his whole life. You don't need Mr. Kondou to say that to you or to Akira Tachibana. The scene in that room spoke enough to let you know what the deal is. And this isn't the only scene like this, as I can name one just about every episode, small or large. Of course, though, that would be spoilers, so I'll refrain from ruining all the magic of this series and leave it to you, the viewer, to find out what the magic of this series is. As for weaknesses, the series does have a couple episodes which aren't that good in my eyes. One episode, I believe episode 9, is just very boring to me and doesn't do a lot at all. The reason is because it focuses on a secondary character, which I believe they kind of focused on at the wrong time, and just feels like it's trying to kill time to get to the climax of the series. Not to mention, that episode just feels like a necessary evil in many ways too, like they just had to get it out of the way. Also, another huge weakness is that the highs of this series do not complement a lot of what comes after those highs. For example, the episodes after huge story moments and character-defining arcs, they feel like episodes that are slow and uninteresting because just before we had this awesome story and character moment. The best way to compare it is to something like having a miniature climax to a movie after 30 minutes into it. Like, I like the idea behind that, having those mini climaxes on paper, but in practice they don't work as well as you would think.
すげえ運命というか縁があるわけだからさ、これを機会に俺と ID なんか交換したらどうだろうか。あれ
When coming into an anime like this, there are things you have to expect from it, I think. For example, I think most people coming into this anime expect it to either be a wish fulfillment show or completely shy away from that. But what the show does in the end is, end up doing is they end up telling a story about characters, about people. And because of this, you obviously have to talk about it in a review, right? So I think it goes without saying, After the Rain has some awesome character development that is more on the subtle side of things. And yes, I understand that some people would have liked more development for this show, and for this show to generally have a more fast-paced development with noticeable change. But what this story needed was something more subtle. But what this show needed wasn't that, it was something more subtle. And while it's not for everyone, I think this show does what it does to damn near perfection. But the reason I think the slower, more subtle pace is needed is because it's simply trying to tell a show it is simply trying to tell a story through a realistic lens. People are fickle, and they're contradictory. Why is that? Because the human race has a massive hard-on for themselves, to put it a little bluntly. We like to be right and sure what we think of others, and the characters here are very unsure about their true feelings for one another. Mr. Kondou and Akira, they know they're attracted to each other, and that's quite obvious to both of them. I think they both know this, but life isn't as simple as just kissing the girl. There are things that come along with love, especially when it's a 45-year-old man and a 17-year-old girl. Mr. Kondou knows for a fact this is unprofessional and this is wrong, and he tries his darndest throughout the whole series to never act on those feelings. Akira, though, she doesn't care. She sees nothing wrong with it, as from her perspective of a 17-year-old girl. Akira, though, doesn't really care about this and sees nothing wrong with it because she is seeing it through the lens of a 17-year-old girl. That's her perspective, not a 45-year-old man with a kid that needs to be supported. This is also why I thought the ending to this anime was great. It was the culmination of a huge slow build that ended in fireworks rather than something calm like the whole series was building it like the whole series made it seem like it was building up to. It goes without saying this is visually one of the best looking anime of 2018 so far. It stands up to Violet Evergarden and Devilman Crybaby and likely will be underrated and somewhat forgotten compared to those juggernauts. But Wit Studios has created an anime that looks incredibly detailed and beautiful. In many ways, where the show slows down in terms of pacing, the art picks up for this and compensates it with amazing visuals. As is customary, I want to talk about the backgrounds first, and the example I want to use is the book fair which Mr. Kondou and Tachibana go to. It's a very simple scene actually, and setting-wise doesn't really change at all throughout. Mr. Kondou and Akira are just there as friends trying to find some interesting books to read and spend some time together. Now, for the story, just forget about that and look at these screenshots here. The details are off the charts. You can see individual details of these books and of course the design of the old man running the booth there. Also, Akira looking at postcards and her picking them up, and they all have their own unique handwriting and all have different wear and tear on them. As for more general things like character designs, I really dig them. These characters have this Uchu Senkin feel to them, which I think is a style that would fit in well with today's anime, and I'm glad After the Rain uses it. It just fits the style of the story and complements it very well. Also, this is an anime where characters actually change hairstyle and clothing throughout instead of having like a general outfit. This of course adds to the realism of the show that it's trying to achieve. In conclusion to the art, I think this is second to only the animation, which, you know what, I guess we'll get into now. This is without a doubt the best part of After Rain from a more technical perspective. This anime has easily the most beautiful and unforgettable moments, visually speaking, I can think of in recent memory. An example of this is once again the episode where Akira gazes into Mr. Kondo's study and when she goes into it. This moment is really awesome, as you can tell, as I'm obviously just gushing about it, but it's a scene in the show that shows off perfectly why I love this series. Anyways, from an animation perspective, you can see Akira with a very surprised face gazing into his study, and as she goes in, you can make out dust particles and the like. Not only that, but her body language is really good in this moment. She moves in such a way as to not really disturb anything. In other words, she's moving and acting with care, as this is not her room, of course. And in a way, this is like gazing into Mr. Kondo's most vulnerable aspect of him, and as well his most strongest aspect. His writing is his life, and she doesn't want to ruin anything involving that. Generally though, character expressions and even the super romantic bubbly moments are also very well done. And speaking more of the latter, as I'm showing you right now, I don't really know how to describe these moments, so I just call them bubbly moments, but they're very well done and the best parts of the show that make me pop every time I see them.
ダメだよ、ちゃんと食わないと。若いんだからさ。たくさん食べないと縮んじゃうよ。なわけないよね。
The music in After the Rain is by Ryo Yoshimata, which as far as I'm aware is the second anime he's done a score for. By the end of the series, I was very impressed by the score and what it brought to the show. It wasn't really varied, it stuck to its strengths, but when the score kicked in, you better bet you were hooked from that point on. After the Rain is unique in that way, because usually when a main theme occurs, it's for filler. But in After the Rain, when the main theme starts playing, you know you're in for some great storytelling visually, writing, and musically. If there is a weakness to the score, it's that in any other moment, it's not really there at all, and only really pops up when it's absolutely needed. That being said, this is an anime you have to buy the OST for, even if you're not a fan of this anime. To me, this is music that is just really stellar and should be celebrated as a real piece of anime history and, of course, a piece of art.
そんなに睨まないでくれよ。
別に睨んでませんけど。
そうめちゃめちゃ睨んでるけどな。
After the Rain is an anime that, from the sidelines and on paper, was suicide. How could you write a story about a 17-year-old girl and a 45-year-old man being romantically interested in one another? But as the story progresses, it becomes obvious that this anime isn't wish fulfillment or awful anime tropes, but a well-thought-out story about people and less about relationships. This is a perfect example and a reminder to all of you watching to not judge a book by its cover. This anime is one of the best anime in 2018 and is easily one of the better written anime in recent memory. After the Rain receives an 8 out of 10. And the reason I gave this anime an 8 out of 10 is simple, really. It's because the only word that came to mind and really when describing this series is beautiful. Everything from the art, animation, characters, writing, it was just beautiful. If there is one thing I can say blew me away in 2018, the first name that I'll think of is After the Rain. And of course, I want to talk about one more thing before we go, and this is kind of off the cuff. I didn't really plan this out, but I don't want to mention it here, but the characters are so lovable. I like just about every single one of them. I like Haircut Kid. I like the girl that likes the Haircut Kid. I like Akira Tachibana. I think she's an awesome character. I like Akira Tachibana's friend. I like Mr. Kondou. Mr. Kondou is one of my favorite characters from this season. Well, I guess not that we're in spring 2018 season now, but from the season that this anime came out, he's one of my favorite characters. And seeing Mr. Kondou and Akira Tachibana's relationship and how it progressed from being this weird taboo relationship to something more than that, to really a deeper, I don't want to say love, but I think that's probably the word to describe it, a deeper love and respect for one another that isn't really what I was expecting. And no spoilers, of course, but the ending, I think, is one of the best endings I've seen in a long time in anime. It just really wraps up all of the characters and all of what they kind of did in the series. And it wraps up the relationship with Akira and Mr. Kondou, and I feel like a lot of people expected a sad ending, but it kind of took what people expected and it kind of turned it on those expectations on their head and went with this awesome ending that, and trust me, I'm just going to say this right now, they don't kiss and make out and all that stuff. They don't get together or anything like that. It's a great ending because it's the way it should have ended. And it ended the way I wanted it to. It went, you know what's funny? When I started this series, I said in my first thoughts video for it that it's got to go this certain way or this series is going to be just wish fulfillment garbage. And it went the way I wanted it to. Maybe not exactly the way I said it would, but all of the points that I personally wanted this anime to hit, it's like it read my mind and it hit those moments perfectly and with almost perfect execution. And I'm so glad I watched this series. I'm so glad I kept with it through its slow parts and through its, I don't want to say bad parts, but for lack of a better word, we'll just say bad parts. So with that being said, I think this anime is not for everyone. I think this anime isn't going to be this perfect anime that I think people are expecting it to be if you're like a huge fan of these kind of stories. You know, this is a good anime. This is a very good anime. It's not 9 or 10 worthy, but it certainly, I think, earned that 8 out of 10 score from at least me. Some people may disagree. I thought it was a good anime. So I have to ask the question before we leave. Did this review help you decide to watch the anime or did it not? I'd love to hear your opinions down in the comments below. If you've already watched this show, if you're watching this sometime way in the future and you've just completed it, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. I'm always down to discuss them after the rain with you guys. Also, before you click off the video, before all that, I need to ask you guys a favor. If you're already subscribed, hit the bell icon. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe and hit the bell icon. The reason for this is because YouTube has basically said, hey, the subscribe button is not the subscribe button anymore. The bell icon is now the new subscribe button. So what happens if you hit that subscribe button? Well, if you hit that subscribe button, you will only get occasional videos from me, meaning that it may be a crapshoot. Some of my videos may pop up, all of them may pop up. None of them may pop up. But a surefire way to get all of my views in your sub feed is to do two things. Is to hit the bell icon and go follow me on Twitter. I post all of my videos on Twitter as well. But other than that, I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the support you give me. I appreciate it a lot. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. If you did, give it a thumbs up. I'll see you guys later. My name is the SeaTactics.